I appreciate you taking the time to sit down with me today. I feel like I caught you at the best time because, well, at least for me, I don't know necessarily for you, this being your last day in the office, so it's an honor to be able to spend a special time with you to reflect on your time. It's also probably the worst time because you've done a million of these interviews already, and I'm catching you at the end of all of them. But one of the themes that I have seen across several of these interviews is the idea of culture. Culture seems to stand as the foundation of how you have built and grown your athletic program. Why is culture such an important value for you?
Well, because it's your backdrop, your foundation to everything you're going to do. So every directive you provide, every goal you set, it should all tie back to what is called culture. You know, there are other ways you could describe it. You could say the roadmap, you could say your value system. Anytime you have a strategic plan, every goal you set should tie back to what you have said is the culture you're trying to create. I think the most challenging part about that is hiring people who will fit into the culture. That always matters because it's always about the people. It isn't about a person, it's about the whole place, and especially senior management and head coaches.
Was there something maybe in your early life or your early career where you decided that if that is so important to you, that's the value that you wanted to stand by as you continue to go on throughout your career and your life?
Well, coaches do this constantly. So I was a coach long before I was an administrator, and we might not have vocalized it in that way, but we knew that we had to have a culture. You know, now you're into team rules, team behaviors, the assistant coaches you hire, how you're going to do everything, so that whether they say it's culture or not, it really is, and they're setting those parameters and expecting everyone that's involved in the program to follow them.
Absolutely. Well, speaking of you being a coach, you recently tweeted who gets to start in college as a head coach at 25 years old and how you were blessed beyond measure. So, looking back, for a lot of people, being a head coach is the end goal. But for you, it was clearly the beginning. If somebody had looked at you when you were that 25-year-old head coach and listed the accomplishments and all the places you had been and where you are today, what would you have maybe thought at that point in your life?
Well, I was pretty naive at 25, and I was coaching in high school. Had been at Walter Williams to start a women's basketball program. They'd never had one, and then went to Eastern Guilford, which is my home school. It was a combination of 3 schools in that area, and actually Torrey Holtz, his aunt, Teresa, played for me both in junior high school and then in high school, and I think she might be the best athlete in the family, by the way.
Don't tell Tori.
I think Tori knows.
He knows now.
I think he already knew. Aunt Teresa really knew what she was doing as a basketball player. But back in the day, this is Title IX passed in 1972. I was hired at Kentucky in the summer of '76. The first class of any scholarship female athletes there was the women's basketball team in '76. So it was a very special time. I'm really grateful I was born when I was born, and I've been able to be on the front of women being allowed to even have a college team and coaching, and then again women in administration, especially the rank of being an athletic director. So it was a fascinating time, but I was pretty naive. Joe B. Hall, who was head coach at that time at Kentucky, was very kind to me and very helpful to me, especially in the context of the culture of college athletics then, when it was so odd to have women's teams as part of a collegiate environment.
What do you think the biggest difference is now in college athletics now as you're leaving than it was when you first started in there?
Oh gosh, nothing's the same, pretty much. I mean, I guess the only thing that remains the same is any student athlete, whether a male or female, can earn a scholarship and have their college education paid for. Decades ago, that was considered to be much more valuable in some quarters than it is today. That has remained the same, but our culture as a country, everything is different. And so part of this in terms of longevity is being not only able to but willing to participate in those changes. and adapt to some of them while maintaining your core values. It's an easy statement to say, not so easy to do. But I'll give you an example. I was reading, I think it was online, so I don't know if it was from Twitter or somewhere. I learned who Nipsey Hussle was. And I asked, I'm reading it recently in his death, and I'm reading about him. And so several of my athletes follow me on Twitter, and I follow them, and then I saw how upset a number of them were about his death. So I asked Coach Keats, talk to me about him and why it matters. Because if it matters to our student athletes, then it should matter to me. And so, I learned some more about his background and began to understand why they cared that he had died. So that's just an example. There are hundreds of those. And if you're not inquisitive and you don't care and you don't mind the separation because of the age difference, then you wouldn't do that. But it matters to me because I always have always wanted to connect with them in that kind of way from a cultural perspective.
Well, you've been a part of programs as a coach and in other positions, and that's paved the way of how you have led NC State athletics here. So in your position, what are the key character traits, I should say? Is there sort of a common denominator for all the coaches that you have hired when it comes to their character?
I've never hired anybody that the NCAA had a file on. You can actually call them and say, hey, we're looking at this person, male or female. Do you have a file on that person? Meaning, have they ever had any serious issues with you? And they will tell you, to their credit. They won't tell you necessarily what it is, but they'll let you know it exists. So we always make that check. The second check we make is through the search firm that we're working with. And we always work with a search firm, or I do, for revenue sport, football and men's basketball hires, and with women's basketball hires too, and I would do the same thing with baseball. So if they know of something that's not formalized, but they feel is real, I've had them say to me, you don't want to hire this person because she has a drinking problem and nobody really knows it except a close, that kind of thing. I pay attention to all of that. So you just start with the basics like that and the checks and balances. And then it's more about talking to them and, sometimes you have the opportunity to meet their spouse and obviously their accolades and achievements in their sport. I always look for overachievers, people who've done things that they should not have been able to do given where they were working.
You have a lot of moments to reflect on, a lot that you are proud of, a lot of big accomplishments, but what are some of your more favorite moments or one of your more special moments? Not necessarily the biggest one, but something that's close to your heart.
Well, one of them was this year. There was a survey that came down from on high, meaning the Board of Governors, that all 15 of the state institutions they oversee were to do an anonymous survey on employee satisfaction, employee engagement and satisfaction. And so all of that happened. They're going to do it every other year is my understanding. And I learned later from the head of personnel here on campus that out of all the academic units and all of the auxiliary units, that our athletic program had tied for number one on our campus for employee engagement and satisfaction. That was a big moment for me because we are demanding, and you wonder sometimes if, we're just pretty tough about setting goals, what people would call stretch goals. But turns out people might like that as long as it's done for the right reasons and they feel they can trust you, that you're going to work with them to try to achieve those goals. So that would be an example of a moment that isn't generally known or understood that meant a lot to me.
Well, you have gone to great lengths to grow this athletic program here at NC State. There's no doubt about that. So now that you're leaving, the athletic program is still on the upward trend. What do you think the next steps are that need to be taken to continue that?
You know, I can't answer that for you because it would sound like I'm telling Boo what to do for his job. I can't do that. I can't do that to another AD. We obviously are better than we were 9 years ago, but we're not where we want to be. But we're in process. I think the thing I have the most satisfaction about is laying the foundation. And that includes the majority of coaches that are here right now, overwhelming number, are just killing it in terms of work ethic, recruiting success, leadership of their teams, all of those things. So I feel really good about that. We've hired 17 coaches in 9 years. He's not going to have to face that. But he will have other challenges. We've always been a program that was challenged financially, and that will continue for several years until the ACC network is as lucrative as we need it to be. And that time will come, but it's not going to come tomorrow or next year. But over time, we'll get there, and that's a financial piece that we're missing right now. So that struggle continues.
Well, for years, you have had a platform to be able to utilize your voice. And now, after all this is gone, how do you continue to have a voice and stay involved in the community?
Well, I'm going to continue with some of my favorite committee work. So I'm on the board of the National Football Foundation that is responsible for selections for the College Football Hall of Fame, in which Torrey Holt is going in December. So, of course, I'll be there as a board member, and I'll be at his presentation. I think we're doing that at the Syracuse game, which is a Thursday night ESPN game. And the National Football Foundation always has a board member representative there, so obviously that's going to be me. I'll stay on Elon's board of trustees if they want me to, and I already have people calling me and talking to me about things, projects, positions. I haven't come close to saying I would do anything. I've said I am, drinking water through a fire hose right now, just trying to get things ready for Boo. Even as you and I sit here in my office tonight, everything will come down off the walls, and then we have to start getting the office ready. There'll be new carpet laid throughout the entire suite this weekend, and new paint in this office so that it feels fresh, and he'll have the opportunity to move the desk and just personalize it and make it more his office. So that's what I'm focused on right now, not on, and I have athletic council today with a very heavy agenda, I might add, very serious agenda.
On your last day.
On my last day, so I'm going to ask them if that was their parting gift for me. But it's all good, and senior staff is ready for his arrival, and they're going to be a tremendous resource for him to help him hit the ground running.
Well, social media has definitely made a huge impact on your involvement. How will that continue in the future? It sounds like you're not going anywhere.
Well, I mean, the account is set up that it was never identified as NC State's athletic director. It's kind of interesting now in retrospect that I did it that way. But I only went on to Twitter initially so that I could follow our student athletes. We had an athlete at one time say something on Twitter about his health, that he might harm himself, and it alarmed me. So that was the catalyst originally for my going on to Twitter as @GoPackNow. And then it kind of morphed into a communication opportunity with our fans about issues that large numbers of them cared about. Obviously, in an official role as director of athletics, I can't talk about everything I know or think, but there are opportunities to correct misinformation, that kind of thing. And as I did that, I realized it was actually effective because you're able to talk to more people versus an email exchange one-on-one. So I'll have to decide how I want to interact on it, and I don't know the answer to that right now. All I know is I just want to be sure I'm not doing or saying anything that would hurt whatever initiatives Boo is pursuing.
Well, when you first came to NC State, it was shortly after your sister's passing.
Mm-hmm.
She had kind of left her legacy here, and you kind of had to follow up on that. What was that experience like, you coming in, having to carry on the Yale name here at NC State?
You know, that was one of my favorite things about about being home and being at NC State, is knowing that Kay coached here for 34 years, and that Susan was my younger sister was our first All-American in any women's sport. And Susan's still with us and lives in Charlotte and visits and goes to the games. I've had some funny moments, like Wes Moore said to me, "I'm never going to see you again." And I said, "Wes, Bill and I bought lifetime rights to women's basketball 2 years ago." And I said, "Let me show you where my seats are." And I took him over where they are. But, you know, he is a great personality, a unique personality, and he's going to have a tremendous team next year. I think we have the chance to have the best team he's had since he's been here. And if he sees this interview, he'll say, "Oh, there you go again, putting pressure on me. There you go." But he's done a great job.
Well, before I get to your legacy here at NC State, you have been a pioneer for women in college athletics for decades. What does that mean to you, especially with the rise in the conversation around women's rights?
Well, you know, I'm a very conservative woman, so I don't really fit the mold. I think of what people would think a female AD would think or be like. I'm pro-life. I'm independent politically. I tend to vote for conservative candidates, whether Democrat or Republican. Don't like being in the box. I'm not sure I actually have a party anymore on either side. Other than the pro-life stance is strong, but I believe in strong social programs for the underprivileged and creating opportunities for them. So that's why I say that combination is kind of odd. But I'm glad as a female that I'm the longest serving by a long shot female AD in Power 5. It's challenging at this level for anybody, male, female, gender minority, ethnic minority, but it is different for women and ethnic minorities. You just don't get the same benefit of the doubt. That might change, and I think it has changed some already, but being the only female AD in the league for 22 years was not something I enjoyed. I was really appreciative the last 3 years that Heather Like was hired at Pittsburgh and is doing a terrific job, I might add, and then that Carla Williams was hired as the first female African-American in the Power 5 as an AD at Virginia, who actually came to my quote-unquote retirement party. Retirement's interesting. I'm going to one of a guy named Dan Moat, Dr. Dan Moat, who was my chancellor, my president at Maryland for 12 years. Terrific human being and professional, and he's retiring as head of the National Engineering Association in D.C. And I've already been told the word retirement is not to ever be used. It's called the next adventure. And I kind of identified with that. I thought I probably should have said that early on, because given my energy level, really, it's only a matter of time before Bill kicks me out of the house and says, "You've got to go take one of these opportunities and be gainfully engaged, you know, after some traveling and that kind of thing."
You know, now that you're leaving, between you and your sister, what kind of legacy do you think has been left here in the Yale name?
I can only talk about Kay. I can't talk about me. I'm not good at this. I'm blessed that I was able to come home. I'm blessed that Randy Woodson hired me. He's been very supportive over the years, and we've been through some really tough times here. Again, personnel and finance are issues every week, and most leaders would say that if they're responsible for budgets and for hires and that kind of thing. So I think that the actual results have to just stand on their own, and there's so many other people involved in the results. I understand you need a leader. I understand the leader sets the tone. I understand all of that, but really, it takes so many people to make it work. So I'm not that comfortable with that. Now, Kay, 34 years here, Olympic gold medal in 1988, you know, just an amazing human being, and just a sweetheart. I wish she were here today, and I wish she could have seen the renovation of Reynolds. That would have been absolutely thrilling for her, and to see the new offices and all those kinds of things.
She would have been in all that.
She would have loved it.
Well, we appreciate you taking the time again on your very last day here, and we wish you the best of luck in your next adventure. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and you know, there's really no there's no better fan base. They're really something, aren't they? They just won't give up. They will not give. They will not give up. And how can you not admire that? That's why I always take time for them. I don't know how not to admire that, because the world is so cynical these days, and people give up so quickly on goals and their hopes and their dreams. And the fact that ours are still hanging in there, and appreciate where we are, but still want more. And by the way, should expect more. I just really admire that. So I'll be pulling for the pack as usual,
forever.
every step of the way.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.